Hi guys, it's Tony Robbins. You're listening to Habits and Hustle. Crush it.
On today's episode of Habits and Hustle, we have Dr. Caroline Leaf. Dr. Leaf is a communication pathologist and a cognitive neuroscientist. She has helped literally hundreds of thousands of students and adults learn how to use their minds to detox and grow their brain to succeed in every area of their life, including school, university, and the workplace. She is also a best-selling author of many books, and in her newest book called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, Dr. Leaf offers 5 simple and scientifically proven steps called the Neurocycle to help people overcome the unhealthy thinking habits that contribute to their anxiety, stress, depression, toxic thinking, and intrusive thoughts, and replace them with positive thinking that leads to health, happiness, and success. This episode is full of great information that I learned a lot from and is practical that you can integrate into your life easily. I highly suggest you listen and glean as much information from it as I have. Your newest book is called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. Here it is.
Yes.
And boy, so this book has so much information in it. Like usually, you get a book and like if you get like 1 or 2 like little nuggets of wisdom, you're like happy. Every page, there's like something else. Like my notes. Now the problem is I have so many notes for like I want to ask you, right?
I love that.
It's true. And like the unfortunately though, because there's so many notes, the typing is so small, I won't be able to read them, but that's besides the point.
Gosh, I've done that too. Like I can't read my own writing. Then I write them and I can't read my own handwriting. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what happens to me. And so like, I don't even know where to begin except like, I'm just going to jump right into it.
Yeah, just jump in and let's see where the conversation goes. That's great.
I'm going
I'll
to.
follow you.
Okay, good. So I have to be in my eye now. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to.
Shame.
It's
always,
sorry.
It's amazing how that can go. That happened to me in the middle of an interview the other day. My mascara just like dropped into my eyes and I don't know why. Then I had to try and, not like pour with tears.
Exactly. Okay. I think I'll be okay. Let's just talk first about the whole overall wellness umbrella, how people tend to focus on like the physical fitness, the diet, and yet like the brain, the mind is kind of always an afterthought when that's kind of what leads everything else.
You got
right?
it. Yeah. I love that.
It's true though. And I find it very interesting, like how that should be kind of part of your day-to-day lifestyle, like everything, like the other elements are. Can you kind of like, let's talk about what your whole book approach is and like what neurocycling is. And we can kind of then go from there. Cause that kind of is like the crux of everything. Right. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I can begin. We start.
Yeah,
already?
please go ahead.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Well, that what you've just said is really, it is the crux of everything. If you think of it, your mind never switches off. And the easiest way to understand this is the difference between us being alive and a dead person is our mind. It's our mind. The mind is literally that's how important the mind is. It's actually like, if you look at the scientific research, it's about 99% of who we are as a human. So when you die, that goes and your body and brain disintegrate. And so if that's how important it is, if it's literally driving the brain and the body, it's driving the genetics, it's driving, and I've got all these little props. So for those that all these you'll see brains coming up and all kinds of things coming up. But literally we are driving this and the brain and the body respond. And once we get that kind of thinking and we realize, one of the quotes I put in the book is that you can go 3 weeks without food, you can go 3 days without water, you can go 3 minutes without oxygen, but you don't even go 3 seconds without thinking. You wake up with your mind, you eat with your mind, you do your workout with your mind, we have this conversation with our mind, you interact with your family with your mind, you go to bed with your mind, you sleep with your mind. It never stops, but we don't pay attention to it. In science, it's considered the hard question of science, so they kind of relegated to, and this is certain branches of science, but it's actually the most obvious question. So I've studied it for 38 years, and I've wanted to, starting in a very clinical sense, and then applying it to all different levels, education, corporate, and then just being a human. And that has really shifted how I understand mind. So basically, mind is how it's your aliveness. It drives your brain and your body. Your brain and body respond. Without mind, these don't exist. And it basically is, on a psychological level, your mind is how you think and how you feel and how you choose. It's those three things. So you always, right now, everyone listening and watching, you thinking, feeling, choosing, thinking, feeling, choosing in little cycles. When you think, you feel, when you think and feel, you choose. So think of those always together. That's mind in action. And mind is always in action. So you are thinking, feeling, and choosing at the moment at 400 billion actions per second on the non-conscious level to convert what you're hearing and seeing into your brain, into little trees in your brain that look literally like trees. We're literally growing my words into trees in your brain, which is quite amazing. So that means you are driving the neuroplasticity of your brain as you're listening to me. Now, this is really significant. And people may think, well, what's important about that? Well, let me tell you. As you're listening to me, the information I'm giving you and the conversation we have will be going into the root parts. Like every tree's got a root, and the roots, there's a whole lot. And the roots are the source of the thought. So this is a thought tree, and like a tree's made of branches, thoughts are made of memories. So the roots are the source. So like our conversation would be the source. Then what the tree trunk and the branches are your and the listeners and viewers' interpretation of what they're hearing. Because even though you're all hearing the same thing and seeing the same thing, because of our uniqueness, we see it in our own unique way based on our history of all of our thoughts we've been building and whatever's relevant, whatever's popping up at the moment as you build. Now you're doing this 8 to 10,000 times in a day. So you're building around about 8 to 10,000 of these in a day. Not all of them will stay in your mind and brain, but they're real. They are real physical things. So they in your mind actually receives the information, and it builds, and it does this whole processing thing, and then it pushes it in the brain, and the brain responds by building. You also push it into the DNA of your body. So not only are you storing it in your brain, but in your body too. That's why we've got to be holistic in how we approach ourselves as humans. And it's in the mind. Where's the mind? It's all around and through the brain and the body. And we can use things like gravitational forces and Einstein's work on photons and all this quantum physics and all these fancy physics to understand that every single human has their own electromagnetic gravitational field around the body, and that's mind. So we build memory there too in these waves in the mind. So it's phenomenal. We're building every single experience from the time we open our eyes till the time we go to sleep. We are converting every experience into these trees in the brain, the mind, and the body. Now, sometimes we don't react like we should. So here's a toxic looking tree. So maybe a toxic issue happens, like maybe you have an argument, or maybe you read a post on Instagram and get imposter syndrome, or someone says something to you that throws you completely. And so that's, or there's more traumatic, there's some sort of loss or death or abuse or bullying or whatever it is. The source is toxic. The roots are the toxic source. And then the tree trunk is how you're interpreting it. And then the branches are your interpretation in terms of your behaviors, your emotions, how you feel about yourself. That whole thing is how you show up. This whole thing is how you show up. Here's a toxic showing up. So this is this is the withdrawing or relationship issues or feelings of constant anxiety and just not functioning like you should and whatever. And this is showing up doing whatever it is that you do that no one else can do, and manifesting in your relationship and work, etc. So those are the basic principles. So in this tiny bit already of speaking, I've already explained that the mind and the brain are separate. So we talk very often, the current philosophy or the current sort of language is that mind and brain are the same thing, but they're not. The mind is not the brain. The brain is part of the physical. It's only 1%. It's physical structure. It's a responder. The mind is the 99% that makes the brain work. So mind and brain are separate, mind being the driver and brain being the responder. And then what does the brain build? Thoughts. Thoughts are made of memories. So that's also a difference. Thoughts and memories aren't the same thing. And a thought has got all the emotions in it. So emotions are memories inside thoughts, because every time your mind works, you think and you feel and you choose. Right. So your thoughts, your thinking and your feeling and your decisions are all in this tree. See, in response to this.
So then yes. So then I have a bunch of questions. You said a lot of stuff there.
No, so that's the foundation. Now you can fire away.
Oh my gosh. Okay, here I go. No. So first of all, I guess, so basically you speak a lot about mind management and neurocycling, and there's 5 steps. So the book, again, called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, 5 simple, scientifically proven steps to reduce anxiety, stress, and toxic thinking. Yep, there you go. I have mine too.
Good.
Yes. So would you say then, how does your methodology help, let's say, with ruminating, right? Because people tend to like get stuck on the same thing and not being able to move from that thought. How do you kind of speak about in your book with your method? How does neurocycling help something like that?
That's really an excellent question. So ruminating is that hamster wheel where we just get stuck. Okay, so that's ruminating is now a signal that something's going on in your life. So everything we do, including ruminating, people pleasing, whatever it is that we're doing, we'll stick with the ruminating, is showing up. That's something that's showing up in your life because of. We never do anything just randomly. It's nothing that's just sucked out of the air. There's always a reason why we do what we do. So then we've got to go to the only way we can do something is from a thought. Everything we're doing is coming from a source. The source is the thought, and a thought's got all these components. So if we want to know why we're ruminating, we have to go and track the root. And if we find that root, we will actually understand why we're ruminating, because ruminating is an unresolved issue. It's something that we just have not resolved. It's something that's there and we just keep thinking of it over and over again. The other factor why ruminating becomes so dominant is that whatever we think about the most grows. Like, think of it as watering a plant. As you water the plant, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's getting, and in brain science language, you're basically giving it more and more energy. So each time you think of that same thought and you play that story in your head, you're making this thing stronger and stronger. And then this toxic thought, with its origin and its manifest and its interpretation, is then manifesting as the act of ruminating, and that leads to tremendous emotional kind of challenges like frustration or depression or anxiety or worry or trepidation or all of the above or more that I haven't mentioned. So what we have to do to fix it is we have to become very self-regulated, and this is where the mind management comes in, because mind. We have, in terms of mind, we have the mind that's the experimental, messy part. And that's why I call cleaning up a mental mess. The messy mind is the very active one that's bang in the middle of life and is, from the time you open your eyes, is doing all the work of, what's going on, what's processing, getting it in your brain, building these thoughts. But we don't always self-regulate like we should. In fact, most people, unless we train ourselves, people just kind of, it's just very much reactive.
They fire off, right? Fire
off, yeah, very reactive. And it's really not a good pattern. That creates tremendous feelings, the feelings of overwhelm, burdened, burnt out, under stress, all the things people say all the time. That comes from an unmanaged mind. That's the mental mess I'm talking about. And it's a very human experience. We all do that. So it's okay to feel a mental mess, but it's not okay to stay there, because if you stay there, you're damaging your brain, your body. And we can talk about that in another section. I want to make sure I answer your question. So to fix up that ruminating, what we have to do is we have to get our messy mind under control. How? You have a wise mind. And a wise mind, for want of it, I call it the wise mind or the survival mind. In neuroscience, we actually talk about it being wired for love. So we see that the brain doesn't have any structures or neurobiology for stress or depression or anxiety or frustration or any kind of toxicity. It only has, its design is to manage these things, because we know as humans we're going to be messy, and that's okay. And it's accepting the messiness and repairing and growing. That's what we designed for. That's survival. The survival is, whoops, that didn't work, let me fix. But survival isn't mess. So survival is saying, making the messes, seeing them and fixing them. And to do that, we have to step into this optimism bias, this wired for love mind. So when you have a brain that's wired like that, we talk about that. So that's the physical. In the mind, it's called the optimism bias or the survival mind. And that means that we're drawn to these to fix them, because this is an imbalance. This is recognized by the brain immune system as dangerous as a COVID virus, for example. It's as real as COVID virus. So it's proteins. This is a real thing in your brain. It's proteins and chemicals and quantum vibrations and all kinds of quantum science, sciencey stuff. A virus has also got a physical structure. As soon as there's a virus in your body or damage in your body or bacteria, your brain's immune system says, whoops, survival, fight this thing, send out the army. A toxic thought does the same thing. So ruminating is now, if we keep sticking with the same thought and growing it, our brain's immune system starts freaking out, and we start sending out lots of T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes and macrophages to the site, and we create inflammation. That will make us feel like foggy, and like our decision making is not so good, and we start getting these cognitive effects. We also get the downscale effect into our body of feeling like, hovering anxiety in our mind, but we also start feeling anxious in our body. You might feel some pain in your body, gut issues, whatever. So the way to fix this is to recognize this. First of all, to recognize the signals. Signals are warning you like an alarm.
How do you do that? Well, then I have a couple questions. You said a couple things.
Yes. Okay.
You said self-regulation is super important for this.
Super.
And also having the awareness when it's happening are the two things. So so for people like self-regulation can be kind of difficult for people who, can't self-regulate. That's if they have that as an issue. How does someone even begin to get better at self-regulating, and how do they even feel? How do people who are not good at having self-awareness get better at those two things? So I feel like in order to fix the ruminating problem, you have two other issues.
Yes. And it's really great, because I was going to dive into all of that. So you're very, very insightful.
Yes.
It's very good that you said that. So thank you. You asked what I was going to dive into. Very insightful. Okay. So first of all, it's great. Self-regulation is absolutely key. Now, first of all, self-regulation is a skill you can develop. So that will make everyone feel at ease. Like they don't just come to you and they fit. They come to you all the time and they train. So you don't go to the gym once. It's the same principle operating, but we don't apply that to our mind. Exactly like we know you cannot go to the gym once. You cannot just,
it's
use your mind once.
Working.
Yes. And your mind is working anyway, like your muscles are working anyway. But if you don't work your muscles are not going to do what they should do. Same thing with your mind. Your brain is a muscle, but your mind is not. Your mind is an energy force that works the muscle. So your muscle of your brain just does what your mind tells it to do. So you have to work your mind. So you have to learn how to tap into that wise mind to manage the messy mind. And that's what self-regulation is. And self-regulation is a big word that takes you into awareness and takes you beyond awareness. Okay, so it's a lot. So we've got to start. So if you take self-regulation and we break it down, it's awareness and then it's beyond. The neurocycle is the beyond, and the awareness is kind of your preparation. How do you do awareness? You train yourself. Mind is malleable, trainable, which is really great to know. This is why you should be teaching your kids this from young. Mind management's it's a life skill. Without mind management, we just going to make a mess a lot of the time. A lot of the time we get it right. We neurocycle without even knowing we're doing it. That's because this is a scientific process that happens anyway. I've just studied it and made it conscious and made it simple for people to understand. But this is a mind-brain function. So it's something that we as humans can learn. So it's malleable. So the way that I've developed this is that you can do the first thing to get awareness is you develop what you activate what I call the multiple perspective advantage. So you practice standing back and observing your own thinking, feeling, and choosing. And so mind is thinking, feeling, and choosing. And you can train yourself to be aware of your thinking, feeling, and choosing by going into the multiple perspective advantage. We are able as humans to watch ourselves. And if people think how, you just do it right now. Look at yourself in the reflection of if you're watching us, look at them, find a mirror, pick up your cell phone and watch yourself or something.
Absolutely.
Be aware of what are you doing? Like, for example, how am I holding my hands? How am I sitting? What am I doing? So start with a basic level of what am I doing in this moment? Then watch yourself as you read an email. Immediately be aware, how am I feeling? What are my body movements? What are my behaviors? How am I responding? What's going through my head? And then have a conversation with someone and watch how you string your words together, your body language, your intonation, the impact on them, the response, and watch the response and watch yourself responding and watch how you're choosing. I tell you, it's once you get into it, it catches like fire. And it'll take a bit of time to develop. You talk about developing habits. I've done research on how long it takes to build a habit because there's very little research. And it takes 63 days.
I was going to ask you and say that to you. So everyone always says it's 21 days, right? Like we've had people on this podcast who are habit experts like BJ Fogg and all sorts of people. Everyone's like, 21 days. But really like people who are like true like doctors, neuroscientists, they're always kind of like, hesitant to say. And you're saying it's actually 63 days to actually build a habit?
Yes.
Why? Where did it come from? Where did this whole 21-day thing come from?
It came from, and I put it in the book, there's a plastic surgeon, I think it was a plastic surgeon years ago, was talking about the cycles that our body goes through with healing. So if you have a blister, it takes your immune system about 3 weeks for the blister to heal. So if you've got a major surgery, you're going to heal in maybe 9 weeks or 12 weeks or 24 weeks, but it works in cycles of 3 for the stem cells and all the, so that was translated into popular myth and became this myth of 21 days. It just kind of worked. That's how myths develop. So, there's been so little research done on it. And I read all these people as you say, there's so many people that talk about it. Hey, listen, go do the science. Don't talk about what you don't know, because it does not take 21 days. And it takes, what I've explained in the book, and I've given graphs and everything to show people. I decided to do research because I think there's 4 or 5 studies that have been done. One in London, there's a couple in the States, looking at how long does it really take to change behavior? Because a habit means behavior change. And what I saw is that it takes 21 days. There is something that happens. It takes 21 days to find this pattern, why you're ruminating, to break it down and to reconstruct it into a reconceptualized process. Okay, so to take the tree and break it down, you get what you call gamma peaks happening around 21 days. And that's an interesting thing. A gamma peak means gamma, when you get gamma waves in your brain, you get all these different waves, gamma, alpha, beta, delta, but gamma specifically kind of seals the deal when it comes to neuroplasticity or change. So you want certain kind of gamma waves to flow from the back of your wave to the front of your brain, back to the front of your brain, but in a very kind of ripply way. And I mean, I know I'm trying to make some complex science simple. When it does that, then you actually have all these chemical reactions, and this thing loses its energy, it transfers to here, and you grow a thought. But that only happens if it's run by your mind. So if your mind is actually running the process in a very systematic, sequential, daily process, then by day 21, you will have this gamma peak, which means you've now done this building thing. So you've built the new thought. You've built what you want to do, where you want to go. You've broken down the toxic pattern, or you've identified the trauma, and you're at the place where you're not saying, I am depression. You're saying, I am depressed because of, and here's the root cause.
Right.
I'm ruminating because of, here's the root cause. That'll take you 21 days. But to make sure you don't ruminate anymore about the same thing, you then need to practice for another 42 days. And the reason being is that this is now a teeny little plant. It's a baby plant, and you have to water it. That's literally what's happening. And if you don't water it, it's there. You know you've done the work, and it's the most frustrating thing if people don't get told this, because you do the work. This happens in therapy a lot as well. But then people think, okay, well, why am I not applying this? I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not doing it. What's the key? What's the bridge? It's the other 42 days. That's critical. I mean, I'm give or take a few days. I mean, if it's 43 or 45, it's in that region. So and all you have to do is literally step 5 of the neurocycle. The neurocycle's 5 steps, and we can cover that in a moment in one of the questions. But essentially, the second 42 days are very quick. It's about a minute a day, but you're keeping it in your conscious mind with a very deliberate, simple process. And that doing that daily basically then gives it enough energy that it grows, and now it can jump from the competition of all the trillions of thoughts in your non-conscious mind, which you've been building since a certain point in the womb till the age you're at now. So there's a ton of stuff there, and they're all competing for attention. But whatever's got the most energy, that's the one that will move through the subconscious, from the non-conscious through the subconscious, and actually impact how you behave. So when this comes up, the new behavior, and it's strong enough and it comes conscious, I will then carry out that behavior. But if I can't get it up, it's there, you can't see it. So that's what the 63 days does. It takes that time. It's called automatization. So we see a peak at 21 days. There's a little graph that I can find in a moment, and then it drops down, and that means it's moving back into the non-conscious, but super strong, and then it moves up. So that's kind of the 63-day thing.
So this could be done with anything, right? So like we're talking about, you could talk about, let's just finish with this ruminating, but this could be applied to anything, right? This could be applied to like how, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, toxic, a bad habit.
Relationships.
Anything.
People pleasing, all the stupid stuff that we do. We're all a mess. Everyone's a mess. And that's what we need to accept as well. Mental health is not a segment of the population. Mental health is the entire planet since the beginning of time. So mental health is not on the rise. It's actually an existing condition of mankind. What we're not taught to do is to manage it.
Well, I heard you say that before, that like when people call it mental illness, or like calling anxiety or depression or post-traumatic disorder illness, if you said that's like, it's not, it's just actually like what did you say? It was like,
A
it's
response.
a response. Yeah.
It's a response. It's a response to an underlying
people.
cause. Everything we do, what we've got to remember is everything we do is driven by the mind. The mind experiences everything. So if the mind's experienced something toxic, the mind has processed that into the brain. It's there in the brain and the mind and the body. And that's how you show up. You don't just show up. You show up from what you've experienced.
Right.
That's what we do as humans. You all your experience from a baby, from in the womb, you are building. Your basic personality is sort of there, but it's got to grow, and life's experiences built in, and that's how you show up. That's why a child who's sexually traumatized shows up in a certain with these patterns. Obviously, there's no cookie cutter, but someone who's had bullying will show up in a certain way. Someone who's had whatever. We all show up. We've got to look, and this is part of the self-regulation and the awareness. We've got to look at how we're showing up. And sometimes I used to tell my patients this, and I did an interview this morning, and I was saying that because they asked a similar question, how do you train yourself to be aware? You train yourself to be aware by watching how you show up. And it starts with just observing yourself in that simple way I initially started, and then becoming aware of how you're communicating, and then becoming aware, and just watch yourself in a day. Don't even judge anything. It's all okay. You must always come into this thing with, it's okay, I'm human. Humans do this. None of this, it's bad. I mustn't do this. I must say my gratitude statements. I must have my positive affirmations. I must, all the wellness, quick fix. Wow, what's wrong with me? I can't. We got to put that in its place, which is useful techniques at step 5. Then you can bring those in, and you can wind them in and give yourself grace in the process, because there is no quick fix or magic potion that's going to change this thing. It's mind development.
It is. It's mind development. And I think it's so true. And people are always looking for a quick fix. And the reality is it's like anything that you want to have long-term sustainable results. You have to be working the program, working whatever you're doing. If you want to, you got to eat well all the time. You got to work out all the time consistently to be physically fit, to have to have, maintain your weight, whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You let it go, and it becomes a problem. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. Your mind it's working anyway. So if you don't manage it, it's a mess. But if you manage it, which is actually naturally how you designed, you're going to be better. You know what's interesting related to the world that you move in, and what people know you very well for with wellness and fitness and exercise and just general wellness is. And I'll use this example. My husband and I and our kids, we try and do fasted workouts at least 5 days a week. Right. And we were at the gym the other day, and we're doing our workout, but we went earlier than normal because of the schedule, that hectic schedule at the moment. And one of the people at the gym said, "Hey, Mac and Caroline, we see you here super early." Now, this is the phrase that really got me: to get your workout over and done with. Now, you don't say something like that to me, who's a mind person, because anything to get over, it's the wrong mindset. So the point there is, I wanted to give her a whole lecture, but I didn't. I was very polite and said no. I kind of just said, no, we're enjoying our workout, because that is so important. I would have lost, if I was going there just to get over and done with, that mindset would change the DNA and the brain. And the whole exercise, I would lose up to 80% of the benefit of that routine, that exercise routine I would have just done. Isn't that amazing? Yes. Same thing with eating. You come back from that workout and you now fasted, so you're hungry, and you have this really with organic eggs or whatever it is that you eat, and it's all healthy, but you still in that mindset, this is a lousy day. You wake up worried, you're still worried, you just got your workout done, so you hassled, and you even though you've had a workout, you feel a little better, but you still hassled. You're going to lose 80% of that nutrition as well. So here you've done 2 great things, but because your mind was a mess, you've lost most of the benefit. Now that's what we're not talking about.
See, that's really interesting. That is, I think I actually heard you talk about something on a podcast when I was researching you, about your pancreas, your releases all sorts of different neuropeptides. And if you're angry, you're basically not absorbing the nutrients, and therefore
exactly.
It's amazing.
So your whole digestive system is run by your mind. Your heart's run by your mind. Your lungs everything is run by your mind. So if you are now worked up and all that stuff like you just described, your pancreas is going to secrete 20 different neuropeptides that you have to assimilate the nutrients from the food to take to the cells. That's one of the roles of the pancreas. But if you worked up, and that's just one thing I'm describing, that'll then affect everything else, because everything works as a system. But generally then a lot of those neuropeptides peptides won't be secreted because of the mental mess of your mind. And if they're not secreted, you'll lose up to 75 to 80% of the nutrition. And that's just the pancreas. If the pancreas does that, the gallbladder, the intestines, everything's going to do something wrong as well, because it has a cascade effect through the entire digestive system. Your microbiome's going to go crazy. So what's happening in your mind, there's tons of research on the enteric nervous system. This is real. There is impact. That's why in the first part of the book, I talked about the clinical trials where I talk about some of the biomarkers down to the level of the DNA that can be affected if we just don't manage our mind. But if we manage our mind, we can shift that. We can go from having high cortisol and high homocysteine and increased inflammation and biological ages that are 30, 40 years older than our chronological ages, meaning we're vulnerable to sicknesses, to illnesses. We can go from that back to health just by mind management. You may not even, you're not even going to maybe have solved it yet, but just the mere fact that you are embracing it to solve it shifts the whole way that your physiology functions. And that's the key. That's what I'm trying to put in people's hands, because we've made mental health this inaccessible. I have to go to a doctor. I have to get a medication. It's a scary neuropsychiatric brain disease. What do I do about a brain disease? I mean, that just sounds, terrible. I mean, think of it. This example I've been using a lot. Let's say that you're at a dinner party, and we will get back to the rumination. Let's say that you're at a dinner party with friends, and you sit down, and there's a whole crowd of you there, and you pipe up and say, "Oh gosh, I've been to the psychiatrist today, and I got a diagnosis of clinical depression, and I have this neuropsychiatric brain disease, and my brain is like this and this." And everyone looks at you and thinks, okay, well, and they treat you differently. There's a whole shift in how people see you because of the messaging we've received for the last 48 years. But if you do what the science actually shows and what is the normal human response, and you go to that dinner table, now cancel that story, here's the other story. Oh, hi guys. Gosh, this week has been unbelievable. This and this and this and this happened. And then this brought all these flashbacks of all these things. And then I started realizing, and in therapy, this happened and that happened. And then this came up, and people will lean in and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. No wonder you feel depressed. That would make me depressed. I can't even begin to." And then they share their experience. Can you see the difference?
Yes, absolutely.
It's two different narratives that we have created. And the one narrative has actually put us in a very dangerous predicament in this modern day and age with advances in medicine and technology. Lack of mind management has led to people dying 8 to 25 years younger from preventable lifestyle issues, which is crazy.
Wow.
Absolutely crazy. And the wellness movement has sprung out of that in response. So thank God for the wellness movement. But the wellness movement is not paying enough attention to mind. As you quite rightly said, we talk about let's do the exercise, let's eat the healthy diet, and let's do a bit of mindfulness for stress management. You can't do it in that order, because the mind's driving the body, it's driving the food, it's driving how you came to that wellness practice in the first place, how you actually read that book or listen to that podcast. Your mind is, okay, this is just data, or, oh, this is real for me. So we've got to get our mind managed to get the benefits of anything.
Absolutely. Also, what happens is you get a lot of information overload, right? You can get the data, but then it's executing on the data is the problem, right? Because a lot of people just read a lot, and like it's in one ear out the other. There's a lot of like key fads or trends that people are doing that make them, they say that they're doing to kind of feel like they're more holistic, like you were saying, like the gratitude journals and all these other things. But does it really change? Does it really resonate? And does it really work? That's a whole other thing. There was a study though, I was going to ask you about the idea of like, if you're having a gratitude practice where you say something out loud, like I'm happy, I feel loved, or you say a bunch of different things, does it change the way your brain kind of responds and reacts by saying the words, because your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. There's a lot of studies like that, and basically it doesn't have any sustainability. So you'll have a shift because whatever you do is going to change the brain. But if you are feeling absolutely lousy and you're trying to use a statement, a set of words to try affirmations, you're putting a band-aid on a pussy wound. It's not going to treat the issue. You're putting a band-aid on, you've got to treat the source of why. I mean, I use a pussy wound because it's gross to be visual, but people will, people will remember that. You can't do that. It's like going into the garden. Another analogy that's not as gross is you go and weed your garden, but you just chop the head off. You've still got the root. It's going to come back. So that's the issue. So gratitude, I'm not against gratitude statements and affirmations, but use them in the right place. And that's step number 5. After brain preparation, awareness, 5 steps, and then only, because only then have you worked out why you would actually need that in the first place. Otherwise, you're just honestly slapping a Band-Aid on a wound. And it's not sustainable. And there's also a backfiring effect. Like, for example, a lot of meditation practices, and I am not anti any of them. I think all of it, I talk about them in the book, as well as brain preparation. We need all of these things, but we've taken a lot of the meditation practices out of context from the original sources. And we've taken like bits and pieces and kind of slapped a little bit on. And then people think, okay, well, I'm mindful now. Now I'm just being aware of the now moment. We're never just aware of the now moment, because right now is informed by who you are, which is your past, and what you want in the future. We time travel all the time. Our mind is in constant time travel mode. So the discipline of forcing myself to be aware, which we spoke about a little bit earlier on, is a very good exercise. But you can't just have awareness and not manage it, because it backfires. So people will say things, and the research shows this. People will say things like, now I'm more aware of my issues. Now I've got these flashbacks. It's freaking me out. I'm not going to meditate. I'm not going to close my eyes. It's too scary. And that's what I found in my research too. I show brain pictures inside the brain of people that become aware. I can even show you what it looks like. I don't know if you saw the colored images in the book.
I think I did. I did see that. I'm telling you, this book was like an encyclopedia.
Well, I hope an easy one to read.
It was. I have a lot of, what do you call those, doggy ears in my book here.
Oh, those. So this is on page 166, I think it is. There's a whole bunch of colored images. So what you've got here is...
people who are not watching it, they're just listening. What do I call you? Dr. Leaf, Carol, Dr. Carol Leaf?
Caroline, I'm fine.
Carol, okay.
Caroline. I've got no A's and graces. That's no problem.
Okay, good. Okay, good. She's showing us a picture of her in her book of brain. Just tell them what you're showing.
So the book's called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. And basically it's... I do neuroscientific research, so I do clinical trials. So I look at mind and look at brain. So I'll look at a person's story, the whole psychological side, blood markers, DNA, but I also look inside the brain at the energy response of the brain. So I'm holding up brain maps. They're basically called brain maps, where we've mapped the energy inside the brain. And what we want is mainly sort of gray with only a little bit of color. That shows, and everyone's got their own unique pattern. In that gray, it's not just one pattern. It's as many people as there are on the planet. There's as many different patterns of gray that you can get. But gray just signifies that there's balance in the brain and whatever. And the brain is flowing, like, think of the waves of the sea. What I'm looking at there are the waves of the sea. From the big swells of deep to getting smaller, to the waves building up on the beach and breaking and crashing and the little ripples and whatever. So what you're looking at here is the different frequencies: delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, and this little head map. So essentially, what the bottom you can see one that's bright red, and this is a person in its case study in the book of a person in my clinical trial that was in the control group. So they got no mind management, but they got all the testing, and the testing involved tell me your narrative, tell me what's going on in your life, and psychological tests that also would have questioned that too, and questioned the ability, looked at so they were made very aware through all the brain testing of their issues, but they got no mind management. So over the time, the study ran over the 63 days, because we were also looking at what was happening in terms of the habit formation and so on. And so they got worse. They got so bad. At the end of the study, obviously, we gave them the neurocycle. But if the page before, you'll see another lot of head maps, and the first row is all blue and the rest is kind of a gray. And the blue is when the brain is flatline. When we see red, it's like tsunamis in the brain. Instead of this nice flow like I just described, like you'd see on the beach when the beach is being normal, then we have anxiety, high levels of anxiety and feeling out of overwhelm and all that. You get what we call a red brain. And it either can be spots across the brain, which that person, the control subject, had, like spots across like the middle and the side. That shows that people are having too much of like the breakers. Think of the big breakers on the beach, the whites when a wave crashes, not little ones. Right. Think of gigantic ones that dump you. That's what you're seeing. When your whole brain goes red, that is dangerous. So that particular person's biological age, their DNA had been so weakened that their biological age was older than their chronological age, which meant the cells of their body were aging from not managing their mind. So awareness alone is not enough. And also this person also had been labeled with clinical anxiety. So their identity was all messed up. Clinical anxiety and depression are not its. Schizophrenia, PT, these are not its. They're not diseases. They are responses, as we said. They're warning signals. They're telling you, hey, pay attention. This red brain is like a red light, a traffic light telling you, stop. There's something going on. You can't just keep driving through that intersection. You're going to get wiped out. And that's what our brain and body are doing, our immune system. That is why that person with the red brain had increased inflammation in their brain and their body and increased cortisol levels and that kind of stuff. I won't go into all the detail. But what you do as soon as you start managing it, now the other person with the blue brain, they were in the experimental group, so they got the neurocycle. They did the mind management that we'll teach on the rumination example in a moment. And their brain within 21 days had gone to the gray color we wanted it to go to, and which meant it had stabilized. And then that person at the beginning of the study with the blue brain, they had been diagnosed with clinical depression, relationships offline, work offline, not sleeping, tried everything, medications.
Wow.
They were giving up. This was kind of their last-ditch attempt to just try and get some normality in their life. Within 3 weeks, they'd gone from saying it's hopeless to saying, I know why I'm depressed. Not in the beginning, I am depression. Right. They went from I am depression. By 21 days, they were saying, I'm not depression. I am depressed because I had an experience. I had several adverse experiences, but I don't know what to do. But it was a little tree. So they'd taken this toxic tree, found the roots, deconstructed it, pulled the roots out, destroyed this, and regrown this. That's literally what happened in the brain.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is people, through this neurocycling, part of it, the awareness, self-regulation, learning how to do those things, you're kind of but the crux is kind of figuring out for yourself what the root cause of any problem really is.
Absolutely. That's the source.
That's the source for anything. So and everything else is kind of bandages. But then you do talk about, I think in step 3, step 1 is the awareness. Step 2 is, what's the step 2?
Step 2 is reflect, but the awareness is how there's gather awareness, which is a very specific step. So prior to that, we were talking about self-regulation and awareness and how do you get people into self-regulation. Right. And self-regulation is where you're monitoring your thinking, feeling, and choosing. You're monitoring your mind every 10 seconds. I mean, that's literally what it means. And you might think that's impossible, but your mind's working anyway. So it's just developing a constant state of awareness, which we can do. Okay. Then we spoke about how do you start that process. It starts by being aware, and I gave you the simple examples of looking at yourself and then watching. So that is just getting yourself into this multiple perspective advantage. So you come into the neurocycle with that multiple perspective advantage, watching yourself. Now you are watching yourself, so you watching in your wise mind, and you are also the messy mind. And the messy mind's that active one doing life, and the wise mind's saying, hey, like there's a robot, there's a red traffic light, there's a problem, listen. Right. And we don't always listen though. We kind of ignore this a lot. So this process teaches you to listen. So the easiest way to deal with these, understand the neurocycle, is to recognize, okay, self-regulation, that awareness, and then so you come in with multiple perspective advantage. So an analogy for that would be, imagine that you're flying a little helicopter, but it's like a time capsule. This thing never runs out of gas. It just keeps going. It's you driving it. You're the pilot, and you're flying over this forest, which is all your experiences, your thoughts, with your memories. So it's all your thought trees. So it's a forest of trees. So you're flying over your mind and your brain. And so in other words, you've got a multiple perspective. You can see it over the top. And you've got a co-pilot. Your co-pilot is that wise mind, that wired for love, survival mind, that I know what I'm supposed to do, that we don't always listen to, but that's the person, that's the part of you that it kind of advises you, and that you develop in skill to tune into that as you self-regulate. So that's the scenario. So you approach the neurocycle in your helicopter, which is your multiple perspective advantage. You messy pilot flying all over the place, co-pilot saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't fly like that. Maybe you should see there's a smoke signal over there. This thing's giving a signal off. Maybe we should actually go see what's going on there, because that thing is huge and that's grabbing your attention. And in this particular example, to come back to our example, the signal is, how are you showing up? And you're showing up with this ruminating. See, so now, so there's this, so you the ruminating, let's say it's happening a lot. Let's say that your day just keeps going into rumination, and the slightest thing just sets it off, and you find your mind just going over and over and over these narratives, and then another thing happens, and that's how you deal with stuff. You're just ruminating, and nothing progresses forward, and it's making you feel terrible. So that's the signal. So instead of just flying over, which would be drug it, or positive affirmations, or gratitude statements, or don't do it, tell yourself, don't do it, I'm not going to do it, and you last for 5 minutes and you're doing it again. So you don't want to do that. You have to land the helicopter. You have to land the helicopter at the tree, and you have to get out the helicopter, and you have to embrace that. And embrace, I don't mean go hug the tree, because let's say the tree is full of poisonous apples. You go hug the tree, they're going to fall on your head. You're still going to be overwhelmed. So you stand back at a safe distance. So all the scenarios, how you come in, and you give yourself permission. That's okay. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel shame. There's no condemnation. You're a human. All of us on this planet since the beginning of time battle with our mind. So you land the plane, and that's the attitude. And you get out the plane, and you and your co-pilot, messy mind, wise mind, go up, and now you start step 1. Okay, so that's the whole attitude that you come in. And there is, and I do explain in the book, before you start the neurocycle, I mean, this attitude shift takes you a few seconds. Once you understand what it is, it takes me longer to explain than it does to do. So once you understand it, then you can prepare your. And you can also do a lot of brain preparation, and brain preparation are things like meditation, tapping, havening, deep breathing. And I give you a lot of exercises, some examples, and you can do it just for a minute or so. So you land the tree and you look at this and think, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Do some breathing, do some tapping, do some havening, minute or two. And
what's havening? What's havening?
Havening is when you basically rub. It's the sensation when you just basically hug yourself and you rub your arms up and down, or you can rub your wrists or rub your hands. So it's the sensation of rubbing that then calms down. That sensation goes into your brain and calms down the amygdala, which is which is a part of our brain that holds. It's like a library holding emotional perceptions.
Right.
So as we look at this tree, there's a whole library of memories associated. Look at all the memories. So that's like this is a library of memories, and the amygdala is because the brain responds. The amygdala is activated, so now your mind is reading all the library books, and it can freak you out and say, "This is a lot going on here, and it's pointing to something I'm not quite sure I want to deal with. I'd rather run away." And that's what havening, tapping, deep breathing can help calm down the neurochemical chaos that's happening around that area. Because
tapping too. Tapping works too?
Tapping as well. You can do the tapping. These are different ways of doing tapping.
All this. What does this mean? Like the same thing, it's just to calm down your nervous system?
It does. It's touch. All of this is touch. So this is rubbing touch. So as soon as you touch, you're impacting that gravitational field. Remember I said your mind is gravitational field, and your mind works with your body. So it's creating an integration between the mind and the body. And it's because sensation is how we can also quickly reintegrate. Because when we feel overwhelmed, we disintegrate, literally disintegrate. Yeah. So it's a way of reintegrating. I mean, one of the simplest ways of doing it is, as you're doing this in the tapping, it's touch, which sends a sensation. It's an electromagnetic wave and also a quantum wave that then starts moving through. It increases what we call theta in the brain, which is a wave in the brain that gives you a sensation of peace. That increases theta through your brain, and that calms you down. So they're little calming down tactics. They don't solve the problem, but they get you ready for the work. That's why I call them brain preparation. They're offered in the wellness industry as the solution. They're not. They're part of the solution. And that's why a lot of people will do them and think, well, it didn't fix my problem.
Well, that's exactly it. So like I've heard of tapping and havening, but it's used as like a technique to help with anxiety or depression. But you're saying it's just the start. Like it's like a minute you do before, just to kind of calm yourself down, to kind of like, it's like the foreplay before you start, basically.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's a great way of explaining it. It is. It's the foreplay. It's get your brain and body ready for the work. Because if your neurophysiology is out of whack, it's super difficult to get your mind under control. These are the principles that are operating. Okay. So then you land your plane. You've got these things. You could do a little bit of, one of the exercises I've developed is the 10-second pause, which is based on a lot of different scientists.
Yeah. Tell us about that. I was going to ask you about that anyway. The 10-second pause and the 39 90 rule, I wanted to ask you.
Okay,
Both of those.
there you go. You see, those are good things. Okay, so basically, if you breathe in for 3 counts and out for 7, but it's very forceful. So in for 3, and then you push it out for 7. You push oxygen to the front of your brain. The extended exhalation increases your decision-making capability. So one of the things that goes when you are very overwhelmed is decision-making. And what you want is good decision-making, which is preceded by feeling and thinking, because you think, feel, choose. So when you extend the breath, you improve your ability to think, feel, and choose. And so then
that's the key word, choose, right? Because you're always choosing, right? You're always making a choice.
But it's also feeling and thinking. So the 3 always work together. They never work separately. So what you do to make that 10-second pause even more powerful is you say, as you're breathing in for 3, you say to yourself, think, feel. And as you breathe out, you say, choose. You know, that ocean breath from yoga. You force it out. You almost feel high. You'll feel like it because it pushes it out. And that's what you want. And if you do that 6 to 9 times, that's a minute to a minute and a half. That even 3 times, even once will help. But the more you do it, so you don't have to really do more than 90 seconds, but anything from 1 of those to 3 to 6 to 9 will help calm down the neurochemical chaos. So you can not only use it in doing the work, but you can also do it if you're in a situation that's thrown you. If something happens and, like people say, breathe. Well, how? I'm breathing, like the 10-second pause is very powerful, especially with that cognitive aspect. If everything's like chaotic around you, just breathe in, think, feel, choose for 10 seconds and maybe repeat it a few times. It drops the neurophysiology back to a calm state again. So those are just some of the little things that you can do. And then you would come in and then you actually gather awareness. Step 1 is gather awareness. Step 2 is reflect. Step 3 is write. Step 4 is recheck. And step 5 is active reach. And now, let's say that you are in this process of ruminating and you see you doing it very often. It's a pattern. Anything that's a pattern is a habit. So you're going to have to do 63 days to find this. You're not going to find this in one 5-step neurocycle. You can do the neurocycle very quickly, and I explain it on the podcast where I talk about Orange Theory, where I had an argument with my daughter on the way there. So to sort out that to get yourself under control, you can do the neurocycle quickly to get yourself back under control. But if there's any kind of pattern, you need to do the long version. So you can use neurocycling on 2 levels. Every day, because your mind's working anyway, in the moment. So if you have an argument like I explained, or you read an email and you've got to get your head together and it's thrown you and you've got to get in front of the camera, or someone says something to you and you're completely thrown in the moment. So you can use it very quickly, and the more you use it, the better you get at using it. The key to why it's so great in the moment and in the long term is it's a systematized way that you get your wise mind talking to your messy mind and driving the neuroplasticity of your brain. So it's a systemized process, and the more you apply systems to mind and brain, the more efficient you become. Okay, so that's basically it. So all this picture to paint, you gather awareness like picking apples off a tree. Don't go stand under the apple tree. Stand back and you control the picking. That's why I say gather. Gather means, the whole thing is you're embracing, you're processing, you're reconceptualizing. You're not scared of this. I'm not saying run away from it. I'm saying embrace it. It's not scary. Depression, anxiety are not scary. They're messengers. They're warning signals. So you'd basically gather awareness. So imagine you're holding a basket. You'd gather awareness of your emotional warning signals, your physical warning signals, your behavioral warning, all that. I explain it exactly in the book. So you gather those. So it's very systematic. It's not, don't jumble it all together. It's very distinct. Then once you've got them, you keep telling yourself it's okay. Let your wise mind keep telling your co-pilot, keep saying, this is okay. This is normal. It's okay. We'll sort out the guilt, condemnation, whatever that does. You use it to make it work. You keep reassuring yourself. Then you reflect. Reflect is a deep word for, if you reflect a light through a prism, it comes out the other side in a rainbow. So it's deep. Reflection is deep. It's ask, answer, discuss to find out why you have those signals, all non-judgmental. And then as you gather and reflect, you're going to write down. And that's what I want to ask you. I want to ask you about that because I didn't realize that it was so powerful beyond just organization or like eliminating chaos. There's all this research about writing and your immune system that I had no idea. Oh yeah. No, it's by this stage, if you write, especially if you write after those 2 steps, And if you write, there's two ways of writing. So if you write in so the third step is write in the form of a metacog. The fourth step is writing, but now it's rechecking, it's getting order. So the first one is like literally vomiting your brain on the paper. So it's your mind and your brain. Mind, and always remember mind and brain, okay?
And brain,
So, and the system I developed over 38 years, and by the way, all this, I mean, I've done this for like 38 years in clinical practice and
Amazing.
whatever. There's a whole background here. So these are 5 simple steps, but they're profoundly researched. When you write in the
They
form,
are. This book is like unbelievably, like it's very extensive. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's also easy to read. I don't know if you noticed there that I put little sections in. This is what it means for you. So you can skip the hard science, look at the pictures and read that and still get the benefits.
And also you could go to the table of contents and just kind of get the idea of what it's about. And so it's very, very easy. You do a very good job of putting it in layman's terms for the average person who's not a medical doctor to understand and apply it. So I applaud you for that. But yes,
that's great.
No, it's true.
No, thank you. Well, that's what I hope to get it in the hands of people to help us get our minds right. If we can get this mind right, it takes one mind at a time to have that collective influence. We can get our society changed. I mean, we got to deal with things like societal racism and the toxic environment we're living in. We've got to change stuff. We can't carry on doing what we're doing. And so, but that's a mind thing. That's mind. So if we can get our minds thinking differently, we can be much more, and that's the bigger picture of this.
I agree. And also control and taking the control into our own hands and having the proper tools to help ourselves, which is what this is really about, right? Like you're not relying on an external force to kind of help or, cure you, so to speak, but not a cure, but to help kind of like get you to a place where you want to be. You're kind of you're learning and applying it in a way that's very, very simple and systematic. So sorry. So you were saying something about the writing. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Yeah. This is good. It's all elaborating on it. And that's very true because your mind is with you all the time. 24/7, you're living with yourself. So how are you managing your mind? If you go to therapy, which is a great thing to do, I totally encourage people to go to the therapy, counseling, coaching. This is not going to replace that. This enhances therapy. It enhances coaching and counseling. But you're there 1 or 2 hours a week. What are you doing the rest of the time? You with yourself. How do you live with yourself? That's what this book is essentially teaching you. How do I live with myself?
But also people can go to a therapist for years and have and just be at the same spot.
Exactly.
Like that's the other issue. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Of course, I'm saying if it works for you, all the power to you. But it's always good, I think, to take control of your own life and kind of have the ability to try and help progress forward, right?
You've got to do both. Yeah.
You do. And I think like having the tools, like if it's the whole silly saying of like, do you go fishing or do you learn how to, do you catch a fish or do you like go fishing or what's that silly?
You can teach a person to fish or you can give them a fish. It's that kind of thing. So you can,
I'd rather learn.
Exactly. And we do, because giving a person a fish is not sustainable, but teaching a person to fish is sustainable. So if you are doing this, you'll actually get more benefit out of therapy, because therapy won't go on for years and years, because you'll get progress. You'll be able to identify and get to the root causes and manage those. So therapy is fantastic in this process to help you manage the stuff that comes up, because it gets worse before it gets better. When you start seeing causes of why you're ruminating or why you've got those certain behavior patterns, it can be shocking because you could have suppressed stuff for years. And it's very frightening to see that. So that's where therapy is great, to help you unpack that and process that. But you're taking control, because no one can fix you. No one can fix you. Therapy is a support and a place to process and understand and unpack. But you've actually got to be doing the work. That's what I'm putting these tools into people's hands, so you don't feel completely dependent. You can be independent. I talk about the pathway to empowerment, and that starts with autonomy. And when you realize, when you do all this, picture this whole helicopter, I'm teaching you about agency. I'm showing you have agency. You're empowered to face this thing. You have it in you. You have the power in your mind to be able to face this thing and deconstruct and reconstruct. Because that's why I started in the beginning. Your mind controls your brain. You can direct what you want to change in your brain. Your brain's always changing. So this past can change. Doesn't have to be your future. You can change how the past plays out into your future. That's the power of this thing. So you don't have to be controlled by the past, because we all have a past.
Right.
And we're all creating new pasts in every moment. And we've got to know how to manage those. And that's not what we're addressing. That's why I'm addressing it. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know it works too.
No, it's true. And like you're constantly, like you said, you constantly are, every new experience changes your your, sorry, I'm sorry, how much time do you have left? I don't want to go
We
over.
can do a part two. This always happens. If you want to do that, this always happens. There's just so much to talk about. So
there's like so much. We could talk about that. And then I have one other question about negative thoughts or not toxic thoughts, and how to make sure negative thoughts don't turn into toxic thoughts.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, so quickly the writing. When you write in the form of a pattern. It's called a metacog. And what it does is it pulls the two sides of the brain to work together. It helps you to introspect very deeply, and it actually helps to reduce the inflammation in the immune system. Because what you're doing is you're sending the message to the immune system that, okay, I got this. I'm fighting this. I got it under control. So if you have an invasion of an army and there's no control, everyone freaks out. But as soon as you've got the army then protecting you, and something's happening. So that's what writing is doing. When you write in the form of a metacog, you're giving the message to your immune system.
What is a metacog? Tell people what a metacog is.
So a metacog is a way of organizing information on the page that looks like a pattern. So you're starting in the middle and then you're growing branches exactly like a tree. And it's messy, but it's profound. It is, I can go on for hours about how that helps in therapy with people with dissociation and multiple personalities, to the fact that just using it yourself on a day-to-day basis will help you find out why you're ruminating. So it digs very deep, helps you start digging the sand away to reveal the roots. And then you write that down. It's kind of messy. It's just like, no, you just pour it out. The fourth step is also writing, but now you're making sense, recheck, of what you've written, where you're trying to organize the patterns, the triggers, the activators, the antidotes, and you're reconceptualizing. You're starting to look at it from a different angle. So you're taking that and you're reconstructing it, because at this stage you've deconstructed. Now you are starting the process of reconstructing. Perfect. And the fifth step is an active reach, where you're doing a little simple action, because you cannot do hours and hours of this. And people try and do that. You do 15 to 45 minutes in a day, and you stop with the active reach. It's the full stop on the sentence. It's the, what can I collectively learn from the 4 steps today? And maybe all you learn is that, okay, I'm ruminating 60% of the time. That's your signal. It's making my body, I've got GI symptoms from it. It's creating depression. It's making my perspective like life is just too difficult. So you pick up, that's what you've gathered. Reflect, you may have discovered, okay, well, I'm doing this. It's definitely happening a lot, and it's impacting the way I'm functioning, and it's having a massive impact on my relationship, whatever. And then you write all that down, and as you write, and as you recheck, you're seeing, gosh, there's like a lot going on here. I'm ruminating because I'm stuck. It looks like some sort of perfectionism thing, and so the recheck starts making sense, and then you start seeing, one little root, and then you stop. And active reach is, okay, that's enough for today. You don't want to overwhelm. It's very draining. So you want to keep your energy up. So you're just going to say, okay, well, I'm ruminating because there's some kind of perfectionism going on. And so you could say, it's okay to ruminate because I'm finding the solution. You write that down. It's okay to ruminate because I'm finding the solution. So you've given yourself permission. As soon as you give yourself permission, you own it. It doesn't control you anymore. So it's or it could be a simple statement of, I don't have to be perfect. I think it's perfectionism. I have a reason for my ruminating. It could be that. I have a reason for my ruminating. You write that down. I've got an app as well. You can put it in the app, or just put it in the active reach the reminders on your phone, and you make it pop up. And during the day when you want to go back there and get all heavy, you don't. You stop and you just do the active reach. And then you come back tomorrow. And so you do that for 21 days. And then from date 22 to 63, you're going to just do step 5, which is because over day 1 to day 21, you pull this thing apart, you deconstruct it, upend it, and you rebuild this. If you look there, there's light leaves amongst the dark. The dark is how you're going to behave, how you're going to now function, how you're now going to show up. You're not going to show up like this anymore. You're not going to ruminate that in that way because you now know why. And the light there is why you ruminate. So now you practice this. By day 63, as you want to ruminate, this pops up and says, okay, I'm ruminating because I'm not going to do it. I catch it. I'm going to find out what is the reason in this particular case that I'm ruminating. So your behavior changes. You don't ruminate, and it doesn't impact your relationship. Do you see what I'm saying?
I gotcha. Yes.
That's the process, and it's very, very clearly explained in the book how to do that.
Perfect. Then quickly, because I know we have 2 minutes. Negative thoughts are not toxic thoughts. What are the 2 key things to prevent negative thoughts to turn to?
Well, okay. So the negative thought is the toxic means it's already kind of doing damage. So as it builds, as we have a negative thought, we think something negative, and in the moment, it's something that's flashing up from the past. So the first thing about a negative thought is where's it coming from? What? Because every time you're listening to me now, thoughts will pop up. And because we are informed, the way we understand incoming information is through the thoughts from the past. So if it comes up, some of them will be healthy, some will be these negative thoughts. And a negative and toxic thoughts are very similar. Toxic, it's where it's really controlling you. It's become very ingrained. It's become a habit. It's become part of it's established. Right. Whereas a negative thought might be just a momentary reaction in a situation. So someone says something to you and your thought is, they're irritating. Right. That's not toxic yet. It becomes toxic if you dwell on that and you then build a narrative. Yeah. Yes. If you dwell on and you start building the story, you start making assumptions and you'll be 70% wrong most of the time anyway. So you start building a story. So when something happens and you have a negative reaction and then you kind of grab it and you start ruminating on it, you then build it into a toxic thought. See, that's the thing. So to recognize these is to question every reaction you have, and that comes back to self-regulation. So, gotcha. And you give yourself permission. Oh, okay, I'm thinking this reaction. Oh, this is information, even the negative stuff that we would have thought, that's bad. You don't see it as bad. You see, this is information. What is it telling me? What is, so it's
I thought you're supposed to set a time limit for a negative thought. Like you're only allowed to think about something negative.
That's a technique. That's a technique for it's an active reach technique that you can use as a first step. So when you find yourself if you find during the course of the day that you are allowing a lot of these thoughts to come up, then you're going to control it. We can get into the habit of just allowing them to keep coming. And what we've got to say is, okay, well, I see that. That's like 5 or 6 in a row now. Write them down and say, okay, enough, stop. And now if there's 3 or 4 that have come up, for every negative one or toxic one that's come up, you're now going to force yourself to think of 3 good ones, because the healthy thoughts will then overpower. So it's a discipline. So you're training your mind, your messy mind, which will just go and do its thing. The wise mind says, no, okay, you've thought of 3 of these, you've got to think of 9 of these. It's a 1-to-3 ratio. But you don't ignore these, you acknowledge. And then you say, okay, I'm now for this moment, I'm going to think of 3 things that are healthy, that to build more energy to then get that under control. But I'm not going to pretend this doesn't exist. If this keeps coming up, I have to go do the work. I have to do a 63-day to go and fix it. But in this moment, I've still got to work for the day. So I'm going to get that under control by forcing myself to think of a 3-to-1 ratio. That's what that means.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I know you're going to run to another thing. So I just want to say, thank you for coming on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
No, it was absolutely delightful. Where do people find you, your book, everything about you? Just give us your details.
Well, they can find me at Dr. Caroline Leaf. All my social media handles are Dr. Caroline Leaf, DR. And then my book is called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, as we've been saying, and it's available wherever books are sold. And I know that, so it's available everywhere. And my website's drleaf.com. And I have a podcast also called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess.
Absolutely. So they can get and it's a great podcast.
Thank you so much. I'd love to have you on. I really would.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Lots of stuff to talk about.
Habits and hustle, time to get it rolling. Stay up on the grind, don't stop, keep it going. Habits and hustle, from nothing into something. All out, hosted by Jennifer Cohen. Visionaries, tune in, you can get to know them. Be inspired, this is your moment. Excuses, we ain't having that. The Habits and Hustle podcast, powered by Habit Nest.